That is 16 mod 10, so 8. Design and ambush.
All right, yes. Today we will be designing an ambush.
Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
And this week we are joined by special guest Peter Dillman.
Hi, guys.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Peter. Through a mutual friend of ours, we got wind that you're doing a Kickstarter, actually, that sounded super fascinating. Actually, a few of our listeners reached out to us, too, and said, you should get this guy on to talk about what this Kickstarter is. So let's just start there. Can you tell us, what's the pitch for what you're up to?
Yeah, so I'm a huge role-playing game, board game enthusiast, and wanted there to be a place for people to play. Especially during the global pandemic, we've kind of gotten away from being able to play in person. So I've really wanted to bring people back together. So to do that, I want to get a place, furnish it up, make it nice, make it themed, kind of like an escape room feel meets a traditional game shop with all of your, accessories meets, good old mom's basement where all your games started. Just toss all that into one. The best way to compare it for people that don't know games as well would be like an Air D&D. So games, there's overnights, there's weekend events, there's just a regular campaign, whatever you want, we've got it. And this Kickstarter is to help get the starting funds to furnish it and make it that unique place to stay.
That's super cool. Yeah. So Andy and I actually got together with some friends, previous guest, Tim Saucer, actually over at, his lake house, and we got together for a weekend. We played games for the whole weekend, and it was super fun. It was really nice to get away to a centralized place and just kind of focus on that. Yeah, so is your hope that this place is constantly have people kind of coming in and out, or is the idea really that you're going for an overnight, with your friends to play games all day?
Yes and yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would love for this place to be, campaigns every night of the week, big events on weekends, run epics, have multiple games going at the same time. Yeah. Anything and everything that gets people excited. I would love for new people that haven't experienced tabletop role playing before to come and have a place where they can meet other people, people that haven't played it before. How do you get into the game? Well, you have to have a place to go. This is a place to go.
Is this an idea you've been kind of thinking on for a long time, or did this come up specifically just within this pandemic and this context recently?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this in a variety of formats for the past several years. It morphed everything from a facet of an esports bar that, a bar specializing in broadcasting esports that has a variety of board games for people to play in a back room where you can play D&D and other games, to a regular brick and mortar storefront that has a board game and a tabletop role playing game heavy influence, to now kind of this Air D&D concept. So it's evolved and morphed a lot over many years, just trying to figure out what's the right thing that would work.
What made you feel like this was the time to pull the trigger on it?
Well, I'm running 3 different campaigns right now, and every time I talk to a new group of people, sort of conceptualizing this idea, hashing it out, because I verbalize all my thoughts and bouncing things off of other folks. Everyone's like, "Oh man, that sounds awesome! I would absolutely do that." And like I said, I'm running these multiple campaigns right now. They're all geeked about playing, continuing to play, and seeing that disparate between when we played in person and now playing online through the pandemic. I really wanted to have that place to bring people back to the table. That's a big thing for me. There's a totally different feel in the room when you're playing a game in person, that interaction. And I think that there's an interest from people to be able to come back, as we're hopefully getting through the pandemic, having a place to go to try things. And like I mentioned earlier, having a place for people that haven't done this before to try something new, I think is going to be really interesting.
Is there a component to this of you running games sort of professionally for people who want to come in and try it for the first time?
Absolutely, yes. So I'm absolutely dishing myself out as a DM for hire.
Yeah.
That sort of comes as part of the package. If you want to book a weekend game, you get the place for a couple nights, and I run 10-12 hours of games for folks.
Wow.
Go all the way from character creation, session 0 kind of stuff, to here's how to play for people that haven't, and start playing through a whole complete story within that weekend.
That's super cool. Do you already have the campaign sort of written that you'd run new people through?
Mostly.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Having DM'd a lot of different flavors of games for a long time, I've learned to not write down too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a good framework. I've got my own custom world that I've built. I've got a lot of the bones for that kind of thing, but I want it to feel like traditional role playing, not so much like here's a railroad story that everybody goes through and you experience the same thing every time you come. I want it to still be that sort of open world. If you want to go and turn completely sideways and go explore this one thing that you're interested in, do it, and I'll make something up and it'll be fun.
I love that. I think that this is really admirable, right? Like kind of doing this like almost ambassadorship of like D&D and stuff. So I think there are a lot of people that I think that Andy and I have talked to as well, who are just like, they're interested in D&D but they're not sure where to start, or they're not sure how to get a group together, or they maybe have one friend who wants to play with them and they're just not sure how to get those other people together. So this is super neat. Tell me a little bit about so I know there's like some rewards and stuff. I guess like what's the highlight of the Kickstarter as far as like, what can you get for your pledge amounts?
Yeah. So at the base level, I think something that a lot of people are finding fun is you get to make an NPC that permanently will live in my world. And more importantly, when you come and play, I will make sure that you get to meet and interact with that NPC.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything from like my realtor that helped me find this property. She's like, oh, there needs to be a realtor that exists in your world, right? To sell properties. I'm like, yes, that absolutely needs to be there. So that's sort of the base level, and it just builds from there. Custom dice, custom t-shirts, standard stuff, all the way up through, getting a whole weekend retreat with you and, a group of your friends, if you really want to donate at the topmost level.
Yeah, I will just note that I've had a like realtor NPC, and that was super fun to have in a game. I actually got it from another friend of mine mentioned that he was playing a realtor in his D&D campaign, just as sort of a little bit of a flavor thing. So I pulled that character in. It's fun to have some of those like real world people show up in games. Of course, the party, like, I think immediately, like, threatened them, deceive them, did anything they could possibly do to get the property for much cheaper than it was listed. But
I mean, that's what you do to everyone you meet, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course.
One thing that is really appealing about your Kickstarter idea, and just about the idea of kind of a gaming getaway, it has become so hard as an adult to recapture that energy when you're like a teenager and you are capable of starting a game at, like, as soon as you get out of school on Friday, and on like Sunday morning, you're still going. It's pretty hard, at least for me, to even imagine carving out enough space and time that you can really throw yourself into a game, where you're not checking your phone. I find this Kickstarter idea to be a really fun way to recapture that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to make sure that the experience is really inclusive of folks. Not everybody's into D&D or other types of role-playing games. So I've got, bookshelves full of Euro games, other board games. So if, you and your buddies from college all get together and you want a place to stay and play some games and, chat the night away, you can get this place, get a couple rooms for you and your friends and hang out and have a good time there too.
When I think about gaming getaways, I have to mention this sort of like the white whale, like this. There's this mythic gaming getaway I read about from a poster on RPGNet many years ago, who described he lived somewhere in the UK, and he and his friends rented a lighthouse for a weekend to run a Call of Cthulhu, one of like the Mountains of Madness campaign from start to finish. That will never happen, but like the thought of not only getting together like that, but investing in like the atmosphere and all of those extra side things that kind of feed into the game experience. I don't know, it sounds really fun.
This just made me think that maybe we need to do a weekend at Dillman's Dungeon and like hide a bunch of stuff, like dig some holes in the backyard, like hide some treasure, that sort of thing. Just kind of secretly put a map on one of the shelves, just see what happens.
You say that, but there may or may not be some hidden items planned at Dillman's.
Oh my goodness!
I really want it to be a completely interactive experience. You know, and earlier I'd mentioned kind of like an escape room. I like that sort of mental challenge. In addition, you know, imagine if you're playing a game, a tabletop game, you're role playing, you're you know, crawling through a dungeon, whatever, and suddenly it's like, okay, you're in this room, the door closes behind you, you have to get out, and then I make everybody get up from the table and go into the basement, and now you're in the room, right?
Yes.
So I want to figure out how to get some of those elements ingrained as this business grows. That it becomes even more of that sort of epic and involved experience.
Could you see yourself customizing the environment a little bit if you know what kind of game people will be running?
Yes.
What if you find out someone's coming in and they're going to be running like a sci-fi game for the weekend? Yeah,
I want everything to be flavored, but not so much that it has like one mindset. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So being able to tailor to what folks like to see and use, absolutely.
Okay, so if people want to learn more, obviously, you can Google Dillman's Dungeon or go to Kickstarter and search for it. Are there other places online, like Twitter accounts, wherever else, where people could follow you?
Yep,
check you out.
I've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are my primary socials, if you will.
All right, awesome. Well, we'll put those in the show notes as well. Although people have probably already Googled those things, but I like to pretend that they check the show notes.
Let's see. Let's actually transition to our design challenge. I think that'd be good. At the beginning, you rolled on our table. Yeah, you rolled an 8 for design and ambush. So this is a fun one, right? Like, so the idea that what we're gonna do now is just sort of like talk this through, come up with like the one true ambush to beat all other ambushes, right? No, we'll probably come up with a couple ideas for them, I think. Does anyone have in their back pocket like a memorable ambush that they've run?
When I was younger, my players in playing in D&D or D&D related games developed this process for going through dungeons or hostile environments where they would set up ambushes. Like they would put the fighters on either side of the door, and other characters would take up position, and then they would call or lure monsters in from the next room over or whatever. And it was a little cheesy and gamey, but I got tired of them absolutely butchering every monster. I mean, when something would come through that door, like, 2 heavy fighters would both swing at it, and then people are shooting at it and casting spells. Like it rarely survived like more than a round or two. And so once or twice I have tried to have the monsters do that as well. It always feels a little cheap because you can do a lot of damage if you really rig an ambush well. But I have once or twice I've had the monsters do exactly that. Like you step through the door and there's an orc on either side and they're already swinging their scimitar, and the archers in the corner are already firing at you. That said, I don't, my goal is not to kill the party, so I don't do that too much, but I have indulged in that once or twice. What about you guys?
The imagery that it immediately invoked in my mind was one of my favorite movies as a kid, The Swiss Family Robinson. And there's a holdout scene at the very end where they set up just this massive series of booby traps on a big hill to thwart, the pirates that are coming to attack them. And so immediately when I think of this, that's exactly what I want to build. Is there some objective at the top of the hill that the party's got to go and get, and yet suddenly chaos ensues everywhere they turn. There's some hidden trap or some surprise that they just absolutely aren't expecting.
How about you, Chris? Have you ambushed anyone?
I'm far too nice to really do that as a GM. I mean, I think there's the Lost Mines of Phandelver actually starts with an ambush, which I think is a pretty fun setup. So if you're running that game, I guess spoiler alert, but the party is supposed to be kind of like going down this trail, and there's a goblin ambush. So the very first combat you're in, it starts with like these arrows sort of coming out of nowhere. But it does a good job of telegraphing that like there's probably something amiss. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about. Like, so for an effective ambush, do you have to be fair with the players? So I was thinking about, like, Andy, your story. Did you telegraph to them, like, that this was going to come, like, that the orcs were standing there with their scimitars? Or was this just, like, Andy getting, okay. All right. Yeah.
This was years of, like, you've been doing this to me on a weekly basis for years. Now it's your turn.
Okay, well, let's take a step back, and maybe, like, Andy in his in his calm and right mind, I guess if you were going to design that as like I'm going to write this down in an adventure, have this ambush set up, I guess, like, how would you set that up so it doesn't feel like it's unfair to the players?
Yeah, well, both of you guys feel free to chime in too. I'll just babble out loud here for a minute. So, I mean, the first thing I think I would want to do is kind of figure out what's the purpose of the ambush. I think the ambush is most interesting when the purpose is not to get a massive alpha strike blow in against the PCs and just skewer them in the first round. I think ambushes are more fun, not necessarily when they hurt the PCs, but when they catch them off guard and they force them into, like, a battle situation that they would never otherwise be in. So they're not wearing their armor, or everything is out of position or out of place, or your arrows are over by the fire and you're way over here. Normal PC parties will go into fights prepared and cautious and wary, and that's fine. They should be doing that, but I would want to look at how fights have been playing out and what are, like, the PCs doing every time they go into a fight that sets them up for success, and how can I, like, push them out of their comfort zone by taking away any crutches they've started to rely on.
So I was going to say, I think it's good to challenge your players to think laterally. I mean, that's one of the main advantages or things that you can learn, and a skill set you can develop is that lateral thinking, problem solving, and so really challenging your players with an ambush puts them on their back heels and makes them think creatively. But I think for me, the biggest thing about an ambush or any encounter, trap, whatever, is it's got to drive the story somehow. So why is there an ambush? And I think figuring that out is such a huge part. What is that do for your story? It's one thing to do it to challenge your players, and that absolutely serves a good role. It's another to say, okay, maybe there's an ambush because that group of goblins that are on the road are being driven to because there's some bigger bad behind the scenes, or to try and force your party back into, they've got to regroup and fortify some area. Well, now that they're in that area, there's something there for them to explore that they wouldn't have been pushed into exploring otherwise. So there's a way to strategically use that ambush to drive some sort of a story element in whatever you've got designed beyond that one encounter.
That's a really good point. I think even going back to what I was mentioning with Lost Mines, Found Elver, like, part of the reason that ambush happens is to draw your attention to the fact that there's stuff off the road. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to walk from point A to point B. It's like, there's a forest there to the north. Like, why are these goblins, in that forest? That sort of stuff. Yeah, you also mentioned, like, going back to something like about, like, traps and stuff. I think, like, yeah, traps have a very symbiotic relationship, I think, to ambushes. Like, a trap can almost be seen, I think, as, like, this inciting incident too. It's like you've stepped on the switch plate, and now this other stuff is going to happen. And that could be a bunch of arrows firing at you. You have rung a giant bell, so now a bunch of people are going to descend upon you. Going back, I think, to our design challenges, like, let's start designing this a little bit. I've heard, like, a couple good ideas about, like, let's figure out how we can design this to push a story along. Andy has decided that he wants to use this as a way to just, like, get back at his players for everything they're doing. But yeah, I think that's, like, probably a good place to start. It's like, okay, so whatever the ambush is, it can't just be like a clever tactical positioning thing. Like, let's think about it in terms of, like, how can it drive forward, the story in some fashion.
And can we assume we're talking about kind of D&D-ish fantasy?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
So one thing that appeals to me about an ambush is the suggestion that the PCs are one step behind the bad guys. Because maybe the ambush was thrown together, like, really quickly right before the PCs came on the scene. But I like the idea that the bad guys picked this time and this moment to engage the PCs because they've been watching them or monitoring them or expecting them. Not only does that make it more interesting, I think, but it also it gives the PCs an opportunity to derail the ambush by noticing those things happening before the arrows fly, right?
Yeah.
So could we come up with like a little scenario where the bad guys are monitoring or tracking or the PCs for some reason?
Yeah, I think that actually gives the PCs that foreshadowing that I think is really important. Getting the PCs getting the sense that somebody is watching them not only serves to give them warning that something's coming, right, and gets them talking and planning and strategizing, but I think it also builds that sense of dread that's so important to make the adventure that much more impactful when that ambush does happen. That's like, oh man, here we are, we're finally in the mix of it.
Ambushes happen when the PCs are going someplace, right? So where are they going?
That's actually a good point. Yeah, maybe we should come up with a setting. I think in my mind, I just keep on thinking about like traveling on a road or like in a dungeon, but I wonder if there's something more interesting.
And it could be a nice challenge to take that like goblin ambush on a road scenario and be like, okay, how can this be more interesting than just the goblins get a free shot in the first round?
Yeah.
So I think with this setup of something tracking our band of heroes to set up for this ambush, that implies a certain level of intelligence, right? Goblins are just chaotic and are just naturally going to take the first opportunity they can to jump the party. They're not going to be strategic about it, right? So I think part of that is in this scenario, there is much more intent and intelligence behind it. So it's one step past, or two steps past bandits cutting down a tree to block the road, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be several layers deep, I would imagine, of luring the players into whatever scenario they want to lure them into.
What if the PC's most recent quest giver is setting them up and is sending them deliberately towards an ambush that they're aware of?
I just thought of this and I'm really taken with the idea of doing the ambush sort of on their triumphant return back from somewhere.
Oh, interesting.
So like maybe like the quest giver has given them something like they know they're going to accomplish it. It helps them out in some way to get whatever item or person that's coming back from the quest, right? So it's on the way back, from this sort of triumphant thing that they've just done back to the quest giver. So how might they use that to their advantage, knowing that the party's coming off of like kind of a high point. They might have their guard down a little bit.
That's interesting too, because a lot of role playing game nights end with like the party victoriously accomplishing their goal. And I think there's something kind of fun about like, oh no, don't pack up your stuff yet. You've got to journey back home. Like I think there's a little bit of dread might crop up.
But why?
So I feel like this is a good opportunity to introduce moral quandary then. So perhaps instead of, the party comes back victorious, they've got their item in hand that they were sent to go retrieve and bring to the quest giver. What if, rather than being jumped by a bunch of bad guys that the party is going to then have to deal with, the town's guard has been tipped off that these group of random people new to this town, these outsiders, have just stolen this thing from somebody, and now the town is set against them.
Oh, so this is like going back to your Swiss Family Robinson thing. Like maybe the town is up in arms. They see this party of brave adventurers coming in, but to them it sort of looks like a band of marauders coming towards their town.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the only person in town who knows that they're there on like, I don't know, like a quest is the quest giver. Maybe they're not around. So it's like everybody else just sort of assuming that there's an attack coming.
I like that idea because I think we can have fun brainstorming how the underdogs would ambush a more powerful party, because presumably the PCs are more powerful than the town guard or the peasants here. But we all have seen many great movies where, the peasant rabble gathers up and uses clever tactics and stuff. So that might be fun to put the PCs in that situation.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Let's do that then. Let's plan on it. Chris, when you said that, I'm thinking of that scene at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark where, you get the sense that Indiana Jones's rivals have a pretty set pattern of letting him get the thing, and then they ambush him as soon as he comes out with the idol or whatever. But yes.
Yeah, you should really learn.
Okay, so the PCs are on their way back from like the dungeon or the whatever. They're laden with loot or they've got the item. and the people in the town they're either heading towards or they're passing through think rightly or wrongly that what the PCs have ought to be theirs instead. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you could even abstract it a little bit to maybe just like the town that the party is going towards does not want them to enter.
Or if they do enter, are going to arrest them, right?
Yeah. Arrest them or try to kill them or something. It's going to be
some
a fight.
sort of aggressive, yeah.
So do the townspeople try to jump or confront the PCs outside town or at the entrance of town? Or is it that situation where the PCs are in town getting a drink and then the town guard captain saunters in and is like... Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I assume that they would try to prevent them from getting in. Yeah, so I guess that would be... So, like, one approach is, like, they go out and set a bunch of traps, right? Like, it's just sort of like, try everything. Yeah, do the Home Alone, Swiss Family Robinson thing. Like, you're not even going to make it inside of here. And if you do, there's even more traps once you get inside. Yeah, or the other one is luring them into, a place of safety.
I think the challenge with that first scenario is the PCs might be like, well, we retrieved this thing, completed this quest. Yeah, we're supposed to bring it back to the quest giver, but the town's kind of not letting us in. We're just going to wander over to the next town and figure stuff out, right? See, I think you need to get them inside, to get them lowering their guard even further. And I would say it would be at the handoff. The fruition of the quest is to return some item to the quest giver. The guards come in and swoop in at that exact moment and say, we've caught you red-handed with the thing that you're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
So that brings to mind then. So then I think the townsfolk would be like cheering them as they're coming in, right? Like they might even go kind of over the top with it. So like again, like a savvy party might be like, well, something's up here. Like, why are they like singing a song about us? Like, how do they know about us?
How did they improvise this song all together? Choreographed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a Disney movie as they're coming in. Like maybe, I just keep on thinking about, is it Bree in Lord of the Rings that has the giant gate that they have to go through to get inside? Not describing this well. So I'm thinking about like a town, right, that has some sort of fortification that they could sort of close off to the players just to make it a little bit more ominous or to keep them inside of a constrained place. So it's like they go into the town, like the gates are open to them, and then as soon as they walk through, they sort of like close and someone locks a key and runs away. So where would the townsfolk then situate the handoff? So Andy, you mentioned like inside of a bar or something like the inn or the tavern or something like that. Is there anywhere else that might be a better spot for them to set up inside town?
So the way I'm picturing it is the person in the know is the quest giver.
Mm-hmm.
So he's setting up this whole scenario so that he has the most advantage. So I'm guessing he's going to want it somewhere on his home turf, some building that's been set up with the explicit purpose, like a 2-story open middle kind of scenario where the PCs walk into a desk and then the guards come in and close the doors behind them. And there's, people with crossbows pointing down at them suddenly, just completely fish in a barrel kind of scenario, while our quest giver can duck out or stays hidden and pokes out occasionally to fire off a shot at our heroes just to be that third party in the ambush. Because I think adding another interested party in the ambush gives it that layer of depth and feel that it's not just one-on-one. There's what's this other guy? I thought he was with us.
What if so I like the idea of a 2-story kind of like open building like that. Like what if there's just ladders up to the second floor? So there's the handoff. That guy kind of goes up to the second floor. The ladders are pulled up. And like maybe just for extra drama, they light the building on fire. So like buildings on fire, bars on the doors and the windows and all that sort of stuff. Like maybe there's like one open window on the second floor just to be like, well, you could get out that way pretty easily.
As soon as you said ladders, I immediately pictured like a library where you've got the ladders that you have to like slide around on to get to those top shelves. But probably the town burning their library might not be something they would choose to do.
What if it's just a town of libraries? It's like what a Candlekeep. It's like there's just books everywhere.
They pulled a blazing saddle and built a fake library just to trap the heroes.
So what I kind of like is the ambushers will have the hometown advantage, but they don't want their city to burn to the ground, right? So actually a factor in their decision making is keeping the collateral damage to our town as low as we can, right? By the way, Chris, when you mentioned that kind of two-story thing, I pictured, I don't know, have you guys seen the Legend of Drunken Master with Jackie Chan? Yeah, there's a great two-story fight. I'm pretty sure he employs ladders as a weapon.
and a large bamboo stick, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, in a small village like the inn might be the central gathering place where the PCs would naturally go just to conduct business. Like
a grain silo. That's what I'm thinking about. Like something that you might like a storage facility that would have some verticality to it. It doesn't have to be super plausible. I mean, like, and honestly, it could just be it's our giant library. The wizard built it. That sort of logic.
So who are they? Who are the ambushers? So we've thrown out a couple of different possibilities. We have whoever it is, the quest giver. We have the town guard if they have been pulled into this. There is the possibility of just average Joe citizens being involved in it. I suppose if this is a typical fantasy world, it's possible they've hired some adventurers or brigands or ne'er-do-wells to be the muscle in the ambush. What do you guys think?
I think the nice thing is with the scenario, it can flex to meet the whatever kind of setting you want it to be. If you want to cast the heroes as really bad guys in this town, you have the townsfolk raise up and do something. If you want to have a sort of a neutral setting, you have the town's guard do it. And if you want to have the quest giver be really an evil guy, he's brought in some really beefy mercenaries to take out this group of heroes, an assassination attempt. So I think you can flavor it whichever way you want it.
Okay, so like they go in, like there's some sort of handoff that happens. At least the door is locked.
Yeah. Maybe
the thing is put on fire. Like what else is like fun or interesting that you could do? Do we want to have additional traps? Like, I mean,
so
if they're thinking about it, like they might have set up some stuff.
We're in a fantasy setting, so of course there's going to be some amount of magic, right?
Yes, right. Yeah.
So you can, maybe the floor immediately quicksands, and those heroes that are in the center are now starting to sink in while those archers on the top are shooting down at them. So it's even harder to get out of the fish in a barrel kind of scenario.
Yeah, you could have like all the torches go out at the same time too, right? So like everything goes dark. Although I guess if the fire, if they light the building on fire, it's like all the torches go out, like you can't see anything. And then like the next round, it's like, all of a sudden you can start to see stuff like what's going on, and it starts to get it hotter and hotter in there.
Yeah, we get just so many catastrophes that they start to cancel each other out.
There's rain coming down.
So I really like the idea of having it be sort of flexible as to the nature of the opposition. But so regardless, so these people have taken to some extent the measure of the PCs and their abilities. So if we imagine this is a typical adventuring party, you've got one or two fighty types, you've got one or two magic-y types, and you've got a healer probably. In a way that's fun in a game, how do you take advantage of a group like that? Like, how do you put them on a disadvantage?
Yeah, I wonder if it is, like, again, you have to sort of tailor it to the group that you have. Like, we're talking about a big open space too, right? So if your fighters used to firing off arrows or something like that, maybe you make it really hard to shoot on that first floor. Like there's just stuff obstructing everywhere, right? Like, so getting a clear shot's hard to do it that way. I think though, like given the number of things we've talked about, like that's probably plenty to challenge them. Yeah. Right? Like you're gonna get them caught flat-footed. I think the thing I'm like worried about as far as keeping the ambush interesting is, what if they just find a way out of the building pretty quickly? Does that ruin the ambush, or is it still fun? It's like, okay, well, you found it out, like that's fine. Like is there a secondary step that like has to happen?
Yeah. So now I'm picturing sort of the beginning action part of the movie Red with Bruce Willis. There's a team of hired assassins that come in to kill him, and of course he dispatches of them. And then he hears static on the radio, and of course the second team is waiting, and they come in and start mowing the place down. So if the PCs get out of this scenario and come step outside, now there's the team B, and these guys are even beefier than the ones that were inside, just to make sure that the PCs can't get away.
It depends too a bit what the PC's goal are. You know, if the PCs have their loot still, their goal is going to be to escape. If they have lost the loot, their goal will be to hunt it down and get it back. So I think there's a lot of cool possibilities about running an escape, like in a city that you don't know very well. I mean, it could be really dramatic. You know, if they escape through that upper second floor window you mentioned, Chris, what if they're running across rooftops, you know? If they get out the front door, you know, if they get out of the ground floor doors, what if they're running through alleys that other people know well and that they quickly get lost in, right?
What if we change that slightly? Because I really like that idea. But they were set up by the quest giver. Well, he ducked out as soon as the handoff was made, and he's got his thing, and suddenly the party's under attack by this ambush. Well, what if when they get out, they see him duck behind an alley or darting across a roof? And so now it's turned not just into from an ambush, but now they're chasing him to try and get him back, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then behind them come the mercenaries or the town guard or whoever. So there's now a staggered chase scene that's been added onto it.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's plenty. We're coming up on our time, so I think I think the scene that's set is super fun to me, right? So it's like, yeah, they're going to do the handoff, right? And it's like the doors lock, the place gets lit on fire, the quest giver, you know, skedaddles out the door, skedaddles out the door or the window or, you know, something like that. And I think that's a good ambush, right? Like, so there's probably, there's some fighting inside. If they get out, there's fighting out there. Or there's a chase. Like, there's lots of fun opportunities for action there. Is there any other like flavor bits any of you want to like put a twist on it before we totally wrap up?
Well, I wonder if we could close out by each of us individually or just as a group. If we come up with like 3 interesting things that crop up in that ambush. So these people have had some time to prep for the ambush. In typical Fantasy Town, what have they gone and dug up or prepped to do this? Like, I'm not looking for super powerful stuff. I'm just thinking, like, if you had to go ambush a team of heroes and you lived in Fantasy Town, what would you bring to that fight?
I would have like 3 copies of the item in question, like counterfeit copies of it, just perfect. Sort of like hidden around or able to be dropped at any moment.
Yeah, that's great.
See, I think in terms of what's going to drive that story forward and what's going to be an interesting side reward or benefit for the party members, those guards have brought a dossier on each of the players to say what their strengths and weaknesses are, and maybe the players can find out how to get that dossier on their other party members during the chaos of the ambush.
What do you got, Andy?
I was thinking more like in a Western, the bartender reaches behind the bar and pulls out this, you know, a shotgun the size of your torso or something. Yeah. You know, what's like the fantasy equivalent of that, right?
I mean, I think like a shotgun, right? That'd be pretty cool.
What if this town has like some weird one-of-a-kind blunderbuss and they've polished it and loaded it and cleaned it just for this fight?
I like that. Yeah, maybe flavor-wise, right? It shoots off magic missiles or something like that. But yeah, I like that idea of just like some sort of like multi-wand thing.
And maybe they don't even know how to use it all that well, and that's evident in the way they choose to use it. So you could give them something, you know, whatever. Maybe they went to the temple and picked out their most powerful ancient relic that shoots off some spells, but they don't really know how to use it. So they would have something that's quite powerful, but they're using it inefficiently or poorly. So anyway.
Clearly it has to be a wand that makes fire, and that's how the building gets set on fire. Yes. Is they're originally getting just shot with arrows, right? And then this guy pops up out of nowhere and starts flicking this wand and just starts igniting random parts of the building because things have gone sideways.
Instead, it's a magical flame that you can't just like put out while you're creating some water. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that I think we can call it a wrap because I think we've got our skeleton of an ambush. And if this inspires you to toss this ambush or a variant of it into your game, we'd love to hear about it. So
Yeah. Peter, thank you so much for coming on. This was super fun. I hope it was enjoyable for you. But yeah, I appreciate getting to hear about the Kickstarter, then you taking some time to brainstorm with us about this kind of silly idea, but I'm also really excited to try to run it.
Yeah, absolutely. This was great. Thanks for
is there
the time,
anything about the Kickstarter that we didn't ask you that you would want to leave listeners with?
Yeah, make sure to check it out. Back it if you're interested. Feel free to reach out to me on socials. Send me an email directly and ask about any of the services I have to offer. I love talking about D&D and other role-playing games, so just bounce ideas off me if you'd like to.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. Well, I will wrap us up here then. I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
And again, we had Peter Dillman on. And remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.